I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, recounting the roller coaster of emotions that led to a betrayal so deep, it left scars I'm still trying to navigate. My name is Mark, and I used to think I had a perfect life. My wife, Jenna, was the kind of woman who lit up a room, always the center of attention with her quick wit and infectious laugh. We were married for 6 years, and to outsiders, we were that couple who seemed to have it all: great jobs, a beautiful home, and a tight-knit group of friends. But as I soon discovered, appearances can be deceiving. The cracks started to show about 6 months ago. Jenna became distant, her phone glued to her hand, and I noticed changes in her behavior. Little things at first. She'd come home late from work more often, claiming it was just a busy season at the office. But there was something unsettling in her tone, a defensive edge that didn't sit well with me. I'd ask her about her day, and she'd give me these vague, half-hearted responses. Conversations that once flowed easily turned into stilted exchanges, and I felt like I was talking to a stranger. I began to notice how she acted around our circle of friends, especially around Brian, my best friend. He was a solid guy, a father of two, and I never thought he'd be capable of crossing that line. But there was this lingering tension between them that I couldn't shake off, glances that lasted a heartbeat too long, laughter that felt too intimate. I brushed it off as paranoia, but the gnawing feeling in my gut wouldn't let up. One night I decided to confront Jenna about my suspicions. I waited until after dinner, trying to keep my tone casual. "Hey Jenna, are you okay? You seem a bit off lately." She brushed it off with a wave of her hand, dismissing my concerns. "I'm just busy, Mark. Work is stressful and you know how it is. Come on, it's nothing." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt kept creeping back in. Then came the day that changed everything. I had taken the day off work to get some things done around the house. While tidying up, I found a small, crumpled piece of paper in Jenna's coat pocket. At first, I thought it was just a shopping list, but when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was a note written in Brian's handwriting, filled with suggestive lines and coded phrases that made my skin crawl. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just us. You know it'll be amazing." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as the realization hit me like a freight train. My wife was having an affair with my best friend's husband. I can still feel the heat rising in my chest, a mix of anger and betrayal so raw it felt like a physical blow. I confronted Jenna that evening, my hands trembling with rage as I laid the note on the table between us. Her face drained of color, and for a moment it was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "What's this?" I spat, my voice low and shaky. She stammered, trying to come up with excuses, but the words tumbled out in a jumbled mess. "It's not what you think, Mark. I was going to tell you." The lies spilled out, one after another, all while she tried to make it sound like it was just a little fling, a mistake, as if that would somehow soften the blow. I could hardly listen to her pathetic attempts at justifying her actions, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. That confrontation was the moment everything changed. I felt my world shatter, and with it, I knew I had a choice to make. I would not let this go unpunished, not just for myself but for my friend Brian, who was unknowingly being played for a fool. The anger I felt transformed into something more calculated, a desire for revenge that would ultimately lead to mutual destruction. I took a step back that night, needing to process everything. My heart raced and I felt like I was spiraling. I loved Jenna despite everything, but the betrayal cut deeper than I could have anticipated. I knew something had to be done, and it wouldn't just involve confronting her again. I needed a plan. The next few days were a blur of anger and confusion. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of Jenna and Brian, replaying every moment I could remember, trying to connect the dots. The betrayal felt like a slap in the face, and I grappled with feelings of inadequacy. Was I not enough for her? Had I somehow driven her into the arms of another man? I spiraled into a dark place, one where I was determined not to let them get away with it. I decided to gather evidence. I needed to know how deep this affair went. I started by following Jenna one evening. She thought I was working late, and I let her believe it. Instead, I waited at a cafe near our home, trying to keep my heart rate steady as I watched the entrance. The wait felt like an eternity, but soon enough I spotted her. She was laughing, her head thrown back, and there was Brian standing next to her, shoulders brushing against each other as they shared what looked like an inside joke. They were too close, and it made my stomach churn. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures from across the street. It wasn't long before they left the cafe hand in hand, strolling down the sidewalk like a couple in love. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak, the kind that twists your stomach into knots. I had to remind myself of my plan. I couldn't just let this slide. Not only would I need to confront Jenna again, but I also had to consider Brian, my best friend who deserved to know the truth. The next day, I met Brian for lunch. We had been friends for over a decade, and despite everything, I hesitated. How could I tell him that his wife, the woman he trusted, was sleeping with my wife? I could see him laughing and joking, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. I sat across from him, forcing a smile while my mind raced. "Hey Mark, you all right? You seem a bit off today," he asked, concern etched on his face. "Yeah, there's something I need to talk to you about," I said, my voice wavering. I took a deep breath, preparing for the impact. "It's about Jenna." Brian's expression shifted, concern deepening. "What about her?" I hesitated, the weight of everything pressing on my chest. "I think you need to know what's been going on." I navigated the conversation as delicately as I could, explaining how I had seen Jenna and Brian together, how I'd found the note, the whole affair laid bare. The look on Brian's face as the realization dawned was haunting. His eyes widened and all the color drained from his face. "You're kidding, right?" I shook my head, the truth sinking in. "I wish I was. I wouldn't come to you with this if I didn't think it was serious." The silence hung heavy between us as he processed the information, his mind racing through the implications. Brian's reaction was a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, confusion, and an anger that I had never seen before. "I can't believe this," he choked out, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jenna, she wouldn't do that. I need to talk to her." I nodded, understanding how he felt. "You should, but be careful, man. I think she's been lying to both of us." After our lunch, Brian and I parted ways, both of us reeling from the heavy burden we now carried. I knew the confrontation between Brian and Jenna was inevitable, and I couldn't wait to see how everything unfolded. That evening, I sat at home, my heart racing with anticipation. I texted Brian to check in, hoping he was holding up. He replied hours later, saying he was going to talk to Jenna that night. I couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline mixed with anxiety. I was filled with a sense of impending justice, a feeling that things were finally set in motion. As I sat there, I formulated the next phase of my plan. My goal was clear: mutual destruction of the two people who betrayed our trust. I wanted Jenna to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the pain she had caused not just me but Brian as well. I had to ensure that both she and Brian understood the consequences of their betrayal. With every passing hour, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I wouldn't let this go quietly. I was going to take control of my life back, and soon enough I would bring them both down together. Jenna and Brian would learn that such betrayals never go unpunished. That night was restless. My mind was a chaotic swirl of thoughts, weaving in and out of memories of Jenna and the love I once felt for her. I replayed our happiest moments, like a highlight reel, trying to reconcile how we had gotten to this point. But every time I closed my eyes, I was met with visions of her laughter echoing alongside Brian's, and the knot in my stomach tightened. Around midnight, my phone buzzed, jolting me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Brian. I confronted her. She's in denial, but I could see it in her eyes. "She's been cheating on me. I can't believe it." My heart sank. I felt a surge of anger and sympathy for him. I typed back quickly, "I'm so sorry, man." What did she say? Just that it's not what it looks like. Classic bullshit. I told her I know about you and the note, and she just started crying. "I'm heading over to your place. We need to talk." I had anticipated this moment, yet it was still surreal. My heart raced as I prepared myself, knowing that this confrontation would seal their fates. I made sure to gather my thoughts, ready to support Brian while also ensuring he could see Jenna for who she had become. When Brian arrived, he was visibly shaken. His face was pale, and the anger I had scene during lunch had morphed into heartbreak. "I can't believe she would do this to me," he said, shaking his head as he paced the living room. "I don't know what to do." "Let's start with what she said when you confronted her," I prompted, trying to get him to articulate the lies he had just faced. "She kept saying it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything," he said, frustration lacing his voice. "But how can you say that when you're actively doing it? I just don't understand how she could betray me like this." I nodded in understanding. "It's all part of the denial, man. They think they can play both sides without consequences. But this isn't just about her, it's about us too. We need to make sure she understands what she's lost." With that, I shared my plan with Brian, the one I had been crafting all night. "We need to make this public. People like Jenna thrive on appearances. They need to be taken down a notch, shown the reality of their choices." Brian listened intently, the flicker of a smirk crossing his lips as he considered. "My words, you think we should expose them?" "Absolutely. Let them feel the weight of their actions. Let Brian's wife see just how deeply she's hurt you, and let Jenna see how her deception has torn apart two families." Brian nodded, a steely look of resolve replacing the sadness in his eyes. "I'm in. Let's do it." We spent the next few hours crafting messages and gathering evidence, planning how to reveal the affair to our friend group. We knew it would be messy, but it was necessary. I meticulously compiled the photos I had taken of Jenna and Brian together, the incriminating note, and the details of their escapades. I felt a grim satisfaction as I organized everything, ready to unleash it on them both. The following day was a planned gathering with our close friends. Jenna was oblivious to the storm brewing beneath her facade of confidence. She had texted me earlier, asking if I was excited for the barbecue. Little did she know, it was the calm before the storm. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I arrived at the venue, Brian already waiting in the back with our shared confidant, Sarah, who had always been close to our group. "Are you ready for this?" Brian asked, his voice low and steady. "More than ready," I replied. "Let's just make sure everyone is there first." As our friends began to trickle in, I could see Jenna mingling, her laughter ringing out like bells. A part of me felt a pang of nostalgia, a reminder of the woman I once loved. But that feeling was quickly eclipsed by the determination that surged within me. I was ready to expose her, to tear down the facade she had so carefully crafted. When everyone had arrived, I cleared my throat, commanding attention. "Hey, everyone, I know we're all here to have a good time, but there's something important we need to discuss." I glanced at Brian, who gave me a slight nod. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of truth upon my shoulders. I found out some troubling information about Jenna and Brian, and it's time for everyone to know the truth. Gasps filled the room as I pulled out my phone and displayed the photos I had taken. The shock on everyone's faces was palpable as I revealed the notes, the messages, and the countless lies they had been fed for months. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, the disbelief washing over everyone, then anger, and finally pity for Brian as the truth sank in. Jenna stood there, mouth agape, unable to form coherent words as the reality of her actions hit like a tidal wave. The whispers and murmurs grew louder, and I felt a sense of satisfaction as Brian's expression turned from heartbreak to furious resolve. "Jenna, how could you?" he shouted, his voice breaking. "How could you do this to me, to us?" The confrontation escalated quickly, with Jenna trying to fend off accusations, her explanations falling flat as we laid out the evidence. It was a cacophony of emotions, but I stood my ground, watching as the very foundation of their lives crumbled around them. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my sense of self, standing tall against the betrayal that had tried to break me. I had done it not just for me, but for Brian too. They had both underestimated the power of truth, and now they would have to face the consequences of their choices. The aftermath of that explosive gathering was a whirlwind of chaos and emotion. As the dust settled, I could see the once tight bonds of friendship unraveling before my eyes. Brian was furious, but beneath that anger, there was a profound sadness that filled the air. Jenna, on the other hand, was desperately trying to save face, her frantic attempts to justify her betrayal falling flat against the tide of evidence we had laid bare. "Mark, you don't understand." she shouted, her voice trembling as she tried to plead her case. It was just a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far. I watched as she floundered, the confidence she once exuded replaced by panic. A mistake, I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady. You weren't just a little careless. You actively chose to betray your husband, your family, and our friendship. That's not a mistake, that's a choice. The room was charged with tension as our friends stood in shock, some whispering to one another, others shaking their heads in disbelief. I knew they had trusted her, as I once had, but there was no turning back from this. Once the truth was out, there was no way to hide from it. Brian had stepped back, his face a mask of hurt and anger. "I can't believe I ever trusted you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been lying to me this whole time, and for what? A fling. You've destroyed everything we built together." Jenna's eyes brimmed with tears, but I could see the anger brewing beneath the surface. She seemed to be calculating her next move, eyes darting around the group as if searching for allies. "You all don't know the whole story. I was unhappy. I never wanted it to come to this." "Unhappy?" Brian shot back. "You never talked to me about any of it. You just went out and found someone else to fill that void. How is that fair?" The argument escalated further, with Jenna desperately trying to defend herself while Brian's hurt became more apparent. The scene was heartbreaking, but I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. They were both exposed, and Brian deserved to know the truth. I stood back, letting the emotional fallout unfold, knowing that it was the right thing to do. As the night wore on, the other friends began to leave, their whispers still lingering in the air. I could sense their discomfort, the uncertainty of how to navigate this new dynamic. I felt a pang of empathy for Brian, who was now left to pick up the pieces of his shattered marriage. It was a harsh lesson in trust and betrayal, and I knew he would need time to process everything. Eventually, it was just the three of us left, me, Brian, and Jenna. The silence in the room was thick and heavy. I felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. "What now?" Brian finally asked, his voice hoarse. Jenna, still trying to regain some semblance of control, attempted to pull herself together. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, Brian. I'll end it with him, just give me a chance." "But how can I trust you again?" Brian replied, anguish etched on his face. "You've broken everything between us." I could see the turmoil in Brian's eyes, the battle between love and betrayal raging within him. Jenna didn't seem to understand the magnitude of her actions, still grasping at straws, trying to salvage a relationship that had been irreparably damaged. "I can't just pretend everything is okay. You've ruined my trust, Jenna." He turned away, taking deep breaths as he fought to compose himself. "I don't even know if I want to work on this." Jenna's facade finally cracked and she began to sob, her tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please don't leave me. I can change, I swear. I never wanted to hurt you." That moment was raw, and I felt a pang of guilt. Was I being too harsh? But then I reminded myself of everything that had happened, the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. "Brian, you need to do what's best for you now," I interjected gently. "You owe it to yourself to think about whether this is even salvageable." She made her choice. Brian nodded, wiping his eyes, still processing the whirlwind of emotions. "I need time," he said. "I can't make a decision right now." Jenna nodded, desperate and grasping for hope. "I'll give you time, just don't leave me." Brian stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, leaving Jenna and me in an uncomfortable silence. I turned to her, my anger still simmering beneath the surface. "You've destroyed your marriage, Jenna. Do you even realize what you've lost?" She looked at me, her expression shifting between anger and desperation. "You don't understand me at all, Mark. You never did. I was suffocating. You think I wanted this. Then why didn't you talk to Brian? Why didn't you reach out before running to another man?" I shot back, feeling the heat of the moment. "You chose to betray him and to betray me. You had options, but you took the easy route." Jenna's eyes flashed with defiance. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? You might have figured it out, but you don't know the half of it." I swallowed hard, trying not to let her words get to me. "You need to face the consequences of your actions, Jenna. This isn't just about you anymore. You need to genuinely reflect on what you've done, not just to Brian, but to everyone this affects." As I stood there, I realized that I couldn't keep holding on to the anger. It was exhausting, and I needed to focus on my own healing. I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life, and Jennifer's breakdown wouldn't change that. I began to walk toward the door, ready to give Brian the space he needed and to give myself time to process this whole mess. "I hope you find a way to fix this," I said over my shoulder, my voice low. "But don't expect it to come easily. You've burned a lot of bridges." The moment felt heavy, but I knew it was necessary. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I had faced the truth, exposed the lies, and in doing so I had begun to reclaim my power. It was time to focus on healing, moving forward and figuring out what my life would look like without Jenna in it. In the days that followed, things began to settle into an uneasy calm. Brian and I stayed in contact, our friendship still intact despite the turmoil. He needed a sounding board, someone who understood the depth of his heartbreak, and I was more than willing to be that friend. We both had our own ways of processing what had happened, but knowing we were in this together helped ease the sting of betrayal. Jenna, on the other hand, was a different story. She reached out to me numerous times, trying to justify her actions and express her remorse. Each text felt like a thinly veiled attempt to manipulate my emotions, but I was resolute in my decision to keep my distance. I didn't want her lies to seep back into my life. I had to focus on healing and finding a new path forward. One afternoon, out of sheer curiosity, I decided to check in on her social media. I saw posts of her trying to put up a brave face, photos that portrayed her as the victim. It was a classic play for sympathy, and it made my blood boil. I couldn't believe she was still trying to paint herself as the innocent one, despite the evidence laid bare. I swallowed my anger and reminded myself that her narrative no longer mattered to me. I had to let go of any lingering attachment to her. As the weeks turned into a month, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me. I was angry, but also relieved to be free of the toxic situation that had engulfed my life. I began to find solace in my routines, spending time with friends and rediscovering hobbies I had left on the back burner. I even dove into work with renewed focus, channeling my energy into projects that had long been neglected. But the most surprising part of this journey was how Brian started to find his footing again. He began to lean on the friends who had supported him through the storm, finding a sense of community that helped him heal. We even made a plan to take a weekend trip, an opportunity to escape the weight of everything that had happened and forge some new memories. As the weekend approached, I felt a sense of excitement. We packed our bags and set off for a nearby cabin in the woods, eager for a change of scenery. The fresh air, the beauty of nature, and the camaraderie of friendship were just what we needed to recharge and redirect our energies. On the first evening at the cabin, we gathered around a fire, the flames flickering and casting warm hues across our faces. I could see in Brian's eyes that he was beginning to heal, the pain of betrayal slowly being replaced with a sense of hope. We joked, reminisced about our past adventures, and made plans for the future, free from the shadows that had once loomed over us. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle above us, Brian turned to me, an earnest expression on his face. "Mark, I can't thank you enough for being there and helping me through this. I don't know how I would have coped without you." I shrugged, a smile creeping onto my face. "That's what friends are for, right? We all go through tough times, but it's how we come out of them that matters. You're not alone, and you never have to be." He nodded, the weight of his gratitude evident. "You know, I thought I'd never trust again, but now I'm starting to think that maybe there's hope for me yet." Our conversation drifted into deeper topics, exploring life, love, and the lessons we had learned from our experiences. I felt a sense of catharsis as we talked, sharing our vulnerabilities that we had never revealed before. After a few days filled with laughter and bonding, we returned home feeling rejuvenated. But as I settled back into my routine, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. I found myself thinking about Jenna, her laughter, the good moments we had shared, and the life we had built together. That's when I realized that healing isn't linear. It ebbs and flows, revealing parts of us we thought we had buried. I knew I had to confront those feelings instead of running from them. So I decided to write her a letter, not to rekindle our relationship or express any lingering affection, but to articulate my thoughts and feelings about everything that had happened. I wanted to close that chapter of my life properly, with understanding rather than bitterness. With pen in hand, I poured my heart out, recounting the joy we once shared and the pain that had followed. I expressed my hurt and disappointment, but also acknowledged the lessons I had learned through this experience. I sealed the letter, ready to send it, knowing that it was an essential step in my journey toward closure. Later that week, I sent the letter, and though I didn't expect a response, it felt liberating. I was no longer holding on to the anger or bitterness associated with our past. Instead, I was embracing the lessons and moving forward, ready to welcome new beginnings. As the weeks turned into months, Brian continued to regain his footing, exploring new relationships and finding joy in life again. I was proud of him, admiring his resilience, and I was grateful that we had each other to lean on. Our friendship had grown even stronger through this ordeal, and I felt grateful for the bond we shared. In the quieter moments, I reflected on what I had learned through this painful experience. I realized that love can be complicated and messy, but honesty and trust are the foundation of any meaningful relationship. I had the power to choose my path, to stand up for myself, and to not be a victim of someone else's choices. I found myself sharing these insights with friends who faced their own struggles, encouraging them to embrace their truth and to not shy away from difficult conversations. I became an advocate for open communication and honesty, recognizing how vital it is in maintaining healthy relationships. And so, while the scars of betrayal may always linger, they no longer defined me. I had taken control of my life, forged new paths, and embraced the beautiful possibility of what lay ahead. I learned that healing comes with time, support, and a willingness to confront the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Life moves on, and so would I. The months that followed were a transformative time in my life. I had taken the lessons from my past and turned them into stepping stones for my future. Brian and I had forged an unbreakable bond through our shared experiences, and we were both moving forward, albeit on different paths. It was a testament to the resilience of friendship and the strength found in honesty. As the season changed, ushering in autumn with its golden leaves and cooler air, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I threw myself into new challenges at work, taking on projects that pushed my limits and forced me to grow. I rediscovered hobbies that had long been dormant, hiking, painting, and even joining a local book club. Each new experience was a reminder that life was still filled with possibilities, even after the heartache. One evening, while attending a gathering with friends, I found myself engaged in conversation with a woman named Lisa. She was vibrant and witty, her laughter infectious. We talked about our favorite books, shared stories about our lives, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time, an undeniable spark. It was a refreshing feeling, one that made me realize I was finally ready to open my heart again. Weeks passed, and Lisa and I began to date. It was exhilarating, filled with laughter and easy conversations, free from the weight of past betrayals. I found myself letting go of the shadows that Jenna had cast over my life. With Lisa, I felt free to be myself, unburdened by the past. It was a beautiful reminder that love could blossom anew and that trust could indeed be rebuilt. Meanwhile, Brian continued to navigate his life post-Jenna, taking his time with dating and exploring his own interests. He eventually met someone special, a woman who appreciated him for who he was and recognized the strength he had shown through his struggles. I could see the change in him, the light returning to his eyes, and it filled me with joy to know he was finding happiness again. As the year came to a close, I decided to host a small gathering at my house, inviting close friends to celebrate the new beginnings we had all experienced. It felt like a perfect way to end the year and toast to the future. We reminisced about the past, laughed about old memories, and shared our hopes for the coming year. It was a night filled with warmth, love, and connection, a stark contrast to the icy betrayal that had once clouded our lives. In that moment of celebration, I took a step back and reflected on how far I had come. I had faced the depths of betrayal, navigated the murky waters of heartbreak, and emerged on the other side with clarity and strength. I learned that life doesn't always go as planned, but it's how we respond to those challenges that define us. As the clock struck midnight and we welcomed in the new year, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was grateful for the friendships that had stood strong, for the lessons learned, and for the love that was blossoming once more in my life. I raised my glass for a toast, my heart full, to new beginnings, resilience, and the power of friendship. I declared, my voice ringing out with conviction. Laughter filled the room, and I could see the smiles on the faces of my friends, each one a testament to the journey we had shared. In the days that followed, I continued to embrace the spirit of renewal and growth. Lisa and I grew closer, exploring our relationship with excitement and openness. I was learning to trust again, to share my feelings without fear, and most importantly, to love myself again. As I looked ahead, I knew that life would still throw its challenges my way, but I also knew that I had the strength to face them head-on. I had built a support system of friends who understood the depths of pain and the heights of joy, and we would navigate whatever came next together. Through the darkness, I had discovered my light, and I would carry that light with me as I stepped boldly into the future. Life was a journey, and I was ready to embrace every moment, knowing that every experience, good or bad, had shaped me into who I was meant to be.